I got a great tradition to stand up. I like to get shit on me for standing up, but just so I can sort of protect my voice a bit to the back of the room. Use a deal, there's linked. This is better here. Okay, I think Arnie Foster's promise or threat to leave after United Ireland is one of the best advertising things that the United Ireland argument has going for it. Certainly I always like to think that, and I agree with sort of the comments that she's done a lot to encourage and push people into talking more about United Ireland. And obviously the Brexit situation has thrown up a lot of things for discussion, including the nature of partition and the future of the island that we live on. And I agree with people, certainly United Ireland isn't inevitable, but I think there's a massive opening that hasn't existed for a long time. And I agree with, I think it was Alex that says, you wouldn't have had a meeting of this size, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago. I've been doing meetings on campuses for a while now, and I've never had one this size about United Ireland, so it's very, very welcome. And I think we should welcome the chance to have a discussion about this issue and the issue of partition and the future of politics on the island more generally, and how we see and hope to see things proceed in the few years ahead. And I think obviously with the talk about EU withdrawals and backstops and special arrangements and deals and no deals and Tories and the DUP, we can't escape talk, conversation and stories about the border. And even was it Sammy Wilson or somebody in the DUP in the last few days, it was Jeffrey Nelson, saying that the status deal puts the whole issue of union at threat. So everywhere there's conversations going on about the border, United Ireland, and I think that's a good thing, that's a positive thing. We should welcome those discussions. And obviously, as people have indicated, Brexit has accelerated that process and really accelerated the crisis of the British state, with obviously the North and Scotland voting for Remain. And there's a sense that, in the disunited kingdom, that the Tories don't give a damn about people in Glasgow, Belfast, Derry, or Edinburgh, never mind, their own working class people in England. And I think that's a positive thing in terms of the conversation and the fact that there's a crack in the British state opens up a big conversation chance for us. And I think also, Alex referred to this as well, I think those traditional boundaries are breaking down, and traditionally the border was seen as something binary, so the Catholics will vote for United Ireland and the Protestants won't. And obviously that was an overgeneralisation at the time, but I think now that's changing. There's a lot of people who are moving, if not moving towards United Ireland, certainly open to the possibility of discussing it, and I think it's a positive thing, especially for a lot of people if there's a hard border installed. And even people that I would talk to sort of traditionally would see themselves as sort of unionists with a small u, or people who would, sort of traditionally say, don't talk about United Ireland, we can't talk about that, it's divisive, it's dangerous, or whatever. People that I know from that sort of background and tradition are now open to the possibility of certainly talking about it, and again, that's a positive thing. And amongst a lot of sort of liberal people from Protestant backgrounds, there's a growing consensus about talking about United Ireland. I think it's obviously, I'll come back to the local stuff in a second, but it's not something which is solely defined to here. Look at Quebec, Catalonia, and obviously Scotland was mentioned. There's a re-emergence of what's traditionally called the national question across the world, and I think those areas in Quebec and Catalonia and Scotland give us certainly not a blueprint, but an example of how we can, on the left, if we're for United Ireland, and I am, we can conduct an argument for end of partition. And it has to be, in my view, and People Before Profit Street, one which tackles and deals with questions of economics and social questions. I think that's very, very important and fundamental to winning the possibility of United Ireland. I think it's also worth saying that unionism traditionally says that in terms of the south of Ireland, it was a very backward, conservative religious state dominated by the church and church politics, and that was true. I mean, even still today, I think 93% of the schools are ran or dominated by the church. But that idea in terms of the south being home rule being Rome rule has been cracked and been challenged with the repeal movement in the south. and the vote for equal marriage in the referendum a number of years ago. And I think that's very, very positive, and it's opened up an alternative and another sort of argument for people who are for progressive politics. They're seeing the South, they're seeing what's going on there through people power and through mass movements. They're seeing that as a positive, and they want to see similar politics in the North. So I think if we're talking about in Ireland, last week tackling those questions and supporting people in the fight for bodily autonomy and LGBT rights as well. The other question that people always raise when you talk about United Ireland, people maybe from either an impartial or unsure or a sort of traditional unionist background, is the question of the NHS. And I think certainly for socialists, the question of the NHS is fundamental. And from our perspective, and I'm sure others would probably agree, when you're talking about United Ireland, it has to be on the basis of expanding the NHS that exists, but also dealing with and rectifying and reinstalling the money that's been taken out of it for the past 10 plus years. And that's the bare minimum that should happen in United Ireland. Because for me, I'm not interested or focused in on flags or anthems. I see fundamentally partition and the dividing of the island almost 100 years ago as bringing about what James Connolly said, a carnival of reaction, north and south. We have a state in the north, still steeped in sectarianism, and the south, a state which is still wedded to the church and wedded to multinational corporations. And I think if people in this room are serious about tackling corruption, tackling austerity, income inequality, bodily autonomy, rights for women and rights for oppressed people generally, you have to do it on an island-wide basis. And some people, from the nationalist tradition would maybe argue that those campaigns are important, but deal with the issue of the border first, and we'll come with them down the line. A Labour must wait for the 21st century. I think for us, and people before profit on the left, we have to reject this approach and see those questions very much linked to the fight for United Ireland, questions of rights, questions on income inequality, and so on and so forth.